Hello, my name is Taya Graham, and welcome to the Police Accountability Report. And yes, I'm going to say it, our pledge to you, that the point of this show is holding police accountable. But we don't stop there. We always dig deeper in order to hold the system that makes bad policing possible accountable. And today we're going to show how that system conveys riches to police that makes law enforcement a perpetual money-making machine. But before we get started, I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct or brutality, please share it with us and we might be able to investigate. Please email us tips privately at par@therealnews.com, and you can also follow and message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Twitter or Facebook.
Hey, I'm going to intervene here. Same thing goes for Reedsport Legal. You guys can Google and contact me, send me your videos, interviews. Let me know, guys. I'm there for you.
And please like, comment, and share. You know I read your comments, and I do appreciate them and try to answer questions whenever I can. Now, I want to start today's show with some breaking news, a development that speaks volumes about the information we will report later. Last week, the Maryland Court of Appeals released a critical decision. It involved a question that could have huge implications for taxpayers and who is on the hook for the bill when cops behave badly. The ruling involved the Gun Trace Task Force, the notorious plainclothes unit that made national headlines for robbing residents, dealing drugs, and stealing overtime. The question before the court was a matter of liability. Two men had sued after the GTTF planted guns on them. Their lives were destroyed. Both spent time in jail for crimes they did not commit. But the city said it wasn't responsible. In fact, lawyers for Baltimore conjured the theory that because the officers were criminals, the city was not liable. But the court disagreed, and the ruling made it clear the city was indeed required to pay. For an update on the details of the ruling, I'm joined by my co-host, Stephen Janis. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Taya. I appreciate it.
Now, Stephen, the court was rather pointed in its ruling. What did it say?
It was quite pointed because it said the city was far from not responsible. In fact, it called out the command staff and the mayor's office and the police department for not knowing what was going on, saying, given the length of the conspiracy, given how many people they robbed, given how many people they illegally arrested, the city should have known. So the court was quite pointed, and the court was like, hey, you guys are responsible for this.
Stephen, what exactly did the GTTF do to them?
It's called failure to train and supervise, failure to perform a known duty. Oh, my God. What a bunch of bullshit. Not responsible because they're criminals. It's called the blue line flag.
Men who are part of the suit, and how much are the taxpayer on the hook for?
The two plaintiffs in the lawsuit, Ivan Potts and a man named William James, were both arrested illegally. They both had guns planted on them. They both...
I got to intervene here about these guys in Chicago. I've been following this story. Any of you guys want to look it up? The lawyer brought in a bag of weapons and tools and crowbars and stuff that these guys were using and dropped it on the jury or on the courtroom floor. 200 pounds worth of tools and all the weapons and stuff these guys had. The point was the guy that originally was the whistleblower, the cop, was assassinated the day before the trial started. So... guys, there's a whole big story out there. Check out the Chicago 8.
Time in jail. William James actually lost his house because his house was foreclosed when he was in jail for a crime he didn't commit. Each officer was held liable for $32,000 per officer. So it was about $100,000 per lawsuit. And now the city taxpayers are going to have to pay it because the city has been forced to pay it by the court, and there's no way to really appeal it.
So, as much as the ruling means our city can't evade responsibility, it also has another troubling consequence. That's because ultimately the people who will have to pay the bill are us. Meaning the taxpayers, meaning you and me. It's a cruel twist that means the people who had nothing to do with police malfeasance have to foot the bill. And in Baltimore and in other cities, that is no small number. Here alone, the city pays out millions in lawsuits against cops. And as we uncovered during an investigation, Baltimore is on the hook for legal fees to the tune of
malfeasance, nonfeasance, and misfeasance. Yeah, I do study shit tons of law. Anybody, how about our district attorney, Rick Wiesenberg? How come you don't want to agree to an interview or a debate, or Sheriff John Hanlon or Chief Matt Smart? Funny how none of these people want to come out and have an interview and debate any of this legal stuff, because I know this stuff forwards and I know it backwards.
$7 million in 3 years alone. But it doesn't end there. Consider that between 2009 and 2014, New York City taxpayers forked over $428 million. That's millions to settle brutality claims. The price tag reveals an important truism. Policing is an expensive proposition. It incurs costs that are not always in plain sight and not fully understood. And that's why the Police Accountability Report is undertaking a long-term investigation.
In my playlists are plenty of videos showing people how to sue a cop civilly. It's just like the OJ case. Yeah, you might have lost in the criminal courts, but you'll win in the civil courts, and civil court's way different than criminal court. Guys, if you can't find it in the playlist, contact me. Don't go after the cities and the insurance. Go after these officers' home. Go after their boats, their ATVs, all their guns that they have stolen.
Starting with this episode. It's called The Hidden Costs of Policing. And today, as part one of our series, we're going to look at the hidden price tag that rarely receives attention but conjures huge numbers. I'm talking about police pensions. First, it's worth noting that retirement for cops is very different for you and me. Instead of having to rely on, let's say, a 401 type K plan where you save money and hope for the best, cops get a benefit which is rarely bestowed on us. It's called a defined benefit plan, meaning regardless of stock market performance, you get a set payment for life. And how their payment is calculated is much more generous than, say, Social Security. First, for example, in New York, it's calculated based upon your last year's salary. Second, like here in Baltimore, you can retire as early as 50 years old and collect benefits for life. Now, you might ask, Taya, how is that possible? That sounds expensive. Who pays for it? Great questions, which we will answer. To do so, Stephen and I calculated the value of assets held by police pension funds in some of the biggest departments in the country. We totaled up how much is set aside, how much cities have to contribute year over year, and how much each city has to set aside for a single cop. So, Stephen, what did we find?
Well, it's amazing, the number. Right now, these top 10 cities, and there's a caveat there, some of them include firefighters, and we put asterisks on that. $87 billion has been set aside for the pension of roughly 100,000 police officers. And each year, in the past year actually, in 2018 is the last year where we have the data, almost $6 billion are contributed by these cities to pay for these pensions. So it's an astounding sum of money.
Stephen, that is a staggering amount of cash. Who is paying it, and how much are they paying year over year?
Right. Well, this money is coming from the taxpayers. And in cities like Baltimore that has a 20% poverty rate, it's coming from impoverished taxpayers. And it's coming from the taxpayers who suffer the abuse of police. And it's coming from the same taxpayers that pay the lawsuits and the money that is awarded to people for brutality. So it's coming from us, basically. And like I said before, every year there's a huge minimum contribution to make up for really what are deficits in these pension funds.
But even with all this money set aside, these pension funds don't have enough money to fund their obligations. Stephen, just as an example, we covered the trial of New Jersey Police Chief Frank Nucero, who was accused of beating up a teen during an arrest. But what was really eye-popping was his pension. How much was he making?
Well, what was amazing about what he was making, he was making $7,700 per month. He was a man in his 50s. So if you think about that, over the lifespan of, say, 30 years, which you would expect to live, maybe 80, that would be like $2 million. He was making almost $100,000 a year retired. And what that points to is how much these pension funds are like pyramid schemes. They are underfunded. As we can point to here in Chicago, they're only 23% funded. Basically, the way it's calculated is whether the fund has the entire amount needed to pay all the benefits that are promised in the present. And as far as Chicago goes, it's only 23% funded. So similarly, New Jersey and other states in New York have huge deficits in their pension funds, and we're responsible for them so that people like that chief in Bordentown, which is a town of 14,000, could make $7,700 a month, which is way over anything Social Security would offer any of us.
Now, as we do on this show, we like to offer conceptual ideas that complement the data. In this case, liabilities for lawsuits and generous pensions might offer a solution that could solve both. Why not use pension money to offset liability costs? I mean, couldn't we apply the ethos of predatory capitalism here, that bad behavior should have a price? What I'm saying is, why can't we have tax pensions so police, not us, pay for the acts of brutality? Why should the taxpayer, meaning you and I, be on the hook for both? To discuss this idea, I'm joined by Otto the Watchdog. Otto has built a popular YouTube channel doing what we do here, holding police accountable. Otto, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, glad to be here. It's always good to be talking to Taya.
So, Otto, first off, what do you think about police pensions? Do these huge numbers surprise you?
Well, the numbers are surprising, but not really when you look at the larger picture. I think the far more surprising thing is all the additional benefits that they get just for having worn a badge at one time, including their car insurance, right? So, yeah, they continue to get a pretty substantial payment. An interesting thing to think about is that when citizens are looking for assistance from the government, we're called welfare whores or welfare dependent. Ironically enough, that after a government employee retires, they spend the rest of their life sucking off the teat of the taxpayer for doing absolutely nothing.
So, how much power do you think all this money gives police, and how does it affect policing in general?
Well, that's actually a multifaceted thing. The money definitely is an issue, but that's not necessarily a driving force. I think that the scarier thing is that the people are allowing the police to collect so much money. Not just from like writing citations, but also from imprisoning people for every piece of paper that they do,
stealing their cars through third-party contract, unlawful tows. Yeah, civil asset forfeiture. Don't get caught with any cash in your pocket because the police will take it because it's got to be drug money. Don't get caught with a gun. Oh, you got to be doing something wrong.
Amounts of overtime. Sometimes we've even caught them on the clock for the city, and also getting a private paycheck from doing an off-duty security job on the side, right? So yeah, money is a huge.
They should not only suffer financially going after their stuff. File a commercial lien. If you can't get your money out of a civil lawsuit for a cop, you file a commercial lien for $42 at the county clerk's office in the county you live.
Now, Otto, we're on the hook for paying out for lawsuits. Is it time to send those costs back to police?
So the citizens paying out lawsuits after police misconduct, I am opposed to the idea. Right. On the other hand, I do think that police officers should be financially devastated by going through the court system, just like every other citizen is.
Here.
The same way that if I don't pay my tax bill, then I have to sell my house and my vehicles and my beach house and all that kind
Badges
of stuff.
don't grant extra rights. How many times do we have to say it?
So we are looking at some footage provided by Ghostwriter, and it's of the Jefferson County, Colorado Sheriff's Department. It looks like business as usual, despite pandemic regulations.
Well, obviously, the possession of a badge protects you from viruses of all sorts. So they're not concerned because they don't feel like it affects them. So Ghostwriter is extremely prolific. He is constantly getting exclusive footage of things that they really don't want people to see, and that's what Ghost excels at. So yeah, we've gotten videos of things that have been reported from inmates inside the jail, and in conjunction with that, we've also made several phone calls to the sheriff's department and health facilities around town, and the sheriff's department doesn't seem very concerned about anything, but the lady at the front desk is telling us that everybody is wearing a mask. Everybody in the facility is wearing a mask. And then we get video from Ghostwriter. No, they're not wearing masks, right? And that's at the same time, right? So it's not like there was a delay or anything. And health professionals in the area are absolutely appalled by the report. But what do you do when the only people that you have to complain to are the ones you're complaining about?
Do you think we need to cut back not just on the police budget, but on the number of police themselves?
Yes, and I think it's a good idea, not because I want to see police departments defunded, it's because they're overfunded as it is. We've seen a drastic increase in the militarization of our police department, which is something that the founders of this country specifically warned us against, about installing a standing army. And in fact, that is what we have, and we've done it to ourselves, and we've continuously begged for stricter enforcement of mundane laws, and it's gotten to the point now where by simply writing on a piece of paper, they can take your fundamental rights away, your right to travel, just the right to leave your house or go see someone. And in conjunction with that, they've also taken away the right to protest, even though people are still doing it. So when you're talking about defunding the police, you also have to remember that a huge chunk of their funding comes from civil asset forfeiture, which is absolutely not part of the budget. So if we did away with civil asset forfeiture, a huge chunk of their funding is gone already, and that would be beneficial to everybody involved, I think.
In his book, The History of Western Philosophy, intellectual Bertrand Russell writes of an affliction that beset the Roman Empire in 200 AD. The army, he said, conscious of its power, would not only choose the emperor, but then for a price, kill the current top dog and sell his job to the highest bidder. Well, I know it's not a perfect analogy, but it proves a point. People who are given a gun and a badge and the power over life and death have a unique ability to assert influence. The ability to arrest, detain, charge, and imprison are vast powers prone to abuse. And when they spiral out of control, they threaten the fragile democracy that we all have an interest in preserving. And it are these extraordinary powers, backed with barrels of cash, that make law enforcement industrial complex in this country a force to be reckoned with. The billions of dollars stashed in investment funds of taxpayers' money only makes their power more trenchant. It's a political economy that makes us not just liable for their mistakes, but also saddled with a mandate to provide every single cop a massive annuity to provide them with a comfortable retirement not available to us. Think about it. Very few occupations or American workers have pensions. Social Security, which provides a minimal benefit, is constantly under siege from politicians and Wall Street as being too generous. And 401ks, well, just take a look at the stock market's recent performance. The point is, in a country with massive income inequality and insufficient unemployment benefits, has carved out a special fiscal safe haven for cops. It's a sort of financial leeway that empowers them while draining us. It's another manifestation of the imbalance perpetuated by the fusion of law enforcement and politics that leads to concepts like hegemonic policing, where police use their powers to pick winners and losers, or blanket criminality, where the political rights of an entire community are subdued by mass arrests. I mean, almost $1 million per cop is being set aside in cities that can't house the homeless, fix public schools, or invest in infrastructure. What does that tell you about the real power of police? And what does that say about a society that has pledged much more to law enforcement than we do to nurses, or transit workers, or people who have become the true heroes of the COVID crisis, grocery store employees?
The pandemic.
They can't retire early and rake in tens of thousands of dollars a year? No, like the rest of us, they are on their own. I want to thank my guest, Otto the Watchdog, for joining me today. Otto, thank you so much for your time and your insights.
I appreciate it. Of course, continue doing what you're doing. We all love it.
And I want to thank intrepid reporter Stephen Janis for his investigation into police pensions and his editing and writing. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Tay, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And I would.
All right, guys. You might have heard me coughing in the background. This gets my blood pressure going. I'll tell you what, if you can watch this and not be pissed off, anybody that knows what PERS, all these county and government workers, how they triple dip sometimes, if this crap with the police and their payments and their money, dude, they need all that money because they need to buy more weapons to protect themselves because, dude, do not tell me that people are not waking up to this crap. It's terrible. Think about it in a small town like Gravity Falls. If this don't make you go to a city council meeting, if this doesn't make you share, take this video and send it to a city councilor. I don't care where you live, in what town in the USA. Apparently I have a few viewers in Great Britain and Canada. But anyhow, they're suffering the same things we are. These cops are welfare queens, they're sexual predators. They turn over and roll over and go over to the next county when they have to leave, and nobody ever suffers any repercussions. God bless it. They don't make high enough THC to get me stoned to forget about this crap. I love everybody out there. I appreciate my subscribers. You guys are awesome. I'm not speaking to you, and I know it. Share these videos, not to get views. Share them with your city councilors. Send them to their emails. Send them to your city managers. Send them to your police.